Actually, so what's super cool about that, actually I noticed because I looked up the stats right before TJ got here earlier, is that the episode with you in it has the second highest downloads of all of our episodes.
Everybody loves you, man.
Yeah, everyone does love you.
Well, I am
You're
honored.
made for the mic.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honored. I hope that I can provide more brain meat and brain food to y'all today.
All right. Well, what are we talking about?
We're planning this right now as we speak, as we record this podcast, and I kind of just wanted to pose a question to both of you guys, and we just take turns going. I have my own answer, but I want to know, generally or specifically, just whatever. What do you guys want to see more of in the entire world of martial arts?
Oh man.
So if there's one thing that you think is just incredibly lacking in martial arts in general, it could be for community based, it could be martial like literally war based, anything. What is that thing?
Do you have an answer?
I do if you need more time.
Go ahead.
Go for it. Lead the way.
I would say, just from like the first thing that comes to mind is more cross training.
Okay.
Because I feel like there's, I follow a few different like pages on a few different like social medias about martial arts, and a lot of them will have this like superiority complex.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, Muay Thai is better than boxing, or boxing's better than Muay Thai. But I feel like if we did more cross-training as martial artists, then we would not only be able to respect and understand everyone's martial art, but also grow as martial artists.
Right.
Especially because, like, too many people are like, oh, I'm a stand-up guy. And it's like, okay, most fights do start standing up.
Yeah, you got that for you.
But what if you get knocked over there, bud? And then
I would even argue the question is, what happens when you get knocked over?
Right. And then I love jiu-jitsu. I love the traditions that I'm seeing and experiencing as like I've started that. However, there's so many times I'm in the middle of a jiu-jitsu role, and yes, in jiu-jitsu, being on your back and having them in your full guard is a more preferable position to be in.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you have a big guy on top of you, raining down hammer fists and elbows, it doesn't matter if you can Americana or Kimura that guy.
We know, trust us, you showed us that.
So, from just the first thing that comes to mind, I would say cross-training. I think it would help everyone grow.
I can add into that, because with Bagua, I wouldn't say the first thing I did, but one of the things I did a little later on in my training was, okay, what other systems would complement my Bagua? Because if I'm gonna make it my quote unquote base or foundation of my movement, what else can I use to complement it? Now, honestly, what I found, Muay Thai, because it also has a back-weighted stance and more striking to help complement the striking I have in Bagua. Judo, because there are a lot of standing grappling that can help with the clinch work of Muay Thai, but then I can also throw people out of that. That's a good skill to have, very versatile there. And then boxing, because the footwork is, I feel, pretty similar to Bagua. It's very important in boxing to have good footwork to position yourself. It's still equally important in Bagua. So honestly, those three other combat sports, martial arts, whatever you want to call them, I think would go very well with my style, and just cross-training that would, honestly, for anybody, really, anybody doing Bagua, cross-training those three things, I believe would help complement you in your strengths with Bagua. And as far as weaknesses go, we don't have any ground game. That is the question I'm always asking myself, okay, what do I do when I go to the ground? And from there, I would have to pick up probably wrestling or jiu-jitsu.
I was going to say wrestling would probably fit in there.
I was going to say wrestling is what I've been leaning towards, because part of my Sifu's mantra is stay on your feet. And that is a big Chinese Kung Fu thing, is staying on your feet. I mean, Sua Jiao, which is just Chinese wrestling, they stay on their feet too. So it kind of just goes with the system, I
Just
believe.
pick up sumo.
Pick up sumo.
Yeah,
Oh,
that'd be sick.
I've been getting into like watching sumo a lot recently,
Yeah.
and like it's so entertaining. I love watching it. Like
I don't think I've
One of my
actually seen a
supervisor,
sumo
he
match.
competes sumo here in Dallas.
oh,
Yeah.
you're gonna have
Yeah,
to tell me
tag
where
on.
he goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to tell me where he goes because I
I'll
want to
find
watch
out.
a live event so badly.
I'll find out. I'll let you know.
On his the background on his computer is like sumo Dallas or Dallas Sumo Club
Yeah.
or something like that. So
Yeah, he's into it, man.
I think that's what he goes to, at least as far as competition goes.
Okay, hell yeah.
So I'm no historian, but I'm willing to bet that I'm gonna assume I'm gonna assume that there have always been like kind of elitists that say, oh, my style is better than this style, but I know that like back in the day, like, you know, you have people traveling overseas and like legitimately like learning about other martial arts and stuff. I'm willing to bet that somewhere along the line someone was like, oh hey, I would like to see how your Thai martial art goes against my karate, and it was maybe a friendly exchange. And then let's say this karate sensei was like, okay, this is how you deal with the Thai kick, and then he started teaching that, and then maybe a Thai guy saw that and was like, no, you can't beat my martial art, and boom, rivalry.
Yeah.
And then from there on, maybe, you know, elitist mindsets develop on both sides, and everyone got in this mindset of like, oh, mine is the best or whatever, because nobody wants to be embarrassed, especially if you're saying, oh, this is my Chinese way of fighting, my Japanese way of fighting, or anything like that. Like, then you're speaking for your nation, and if you get put in your place, I imagine it's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
I've never claimed that I fight for America and then gotten beat up for it, so
Right.
can't speak to that. But
I will say that us as humans have the surprising audacity and abundance of just groupings. Like
Mhm.
wherever you go, you will always find people trying to make groups and cliques.
Mhm.
So to kind of piggyback off of what you just said, I've heard of many different martial arts saying, "Oh, we're great, so we're going to go to other schools and whip all their sensei's butts to prove that we are superior." However, I've also experienced in my own life about how a fist fight can make friends. So, kind of like the Thai and the karate guy that you just gave it as an example. I'm sure there's people who are like, oh, Thai is better, karate is better. But I'm also willing to bet that there was like a Thai and karate guy who was like, I enjoy being punched in the face by you.
Yeah.
They threw those hands. They're like, suddenly I respect you so much more.
Right.
I think it's easy, especially if you look and note the application of their life to their art and how it mirrors our own for our arts.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's easy to respect someone who's put in just as much, if not more, work as you have.
Mm-hmm.
Something really interesting that I watched this yesterday. I don't know if you're familiar with Jesse Inkamp, but he's a longtime karate practitioner. Like, it runs in his family. He had a sparring match with I forget the dude's name. Maybe you remember it if you've seen the video. But he was a Muay Thai champion who had been competing since like 9 or maybe 13. Anyway, this dude has been in a lot of fights and won most of those fights. And anyway, he went into the place knowing that this guy put in more work than him, had more experience than him, and was frankly better conditioned to the ring than he is. And they traded some stuff, and there was humility on both sides. And then afterwards, Jesse was like, hey, I want to see some moves that are similar, like things we do in karate that might be similar in Muay Thai, and he kind of just comparing and contrasted the two just for the sake of like building that friendship and building that understanding. I thought that was sick. I think needs to be a lot more of that. To kind of, I don't know what you were saying as far as cross training.
And that's kind of what I looked for whenever I was trying to find, I guess not trying to find them, but looking outside of the Bagua box that I have, and it was like, all right, what else can I look for that might help complement? And I was looking for similar movements, similar principles, similar ideals, because it's hard to go from one extreme to another. It would be hard for me to do Bagua and then suddenly transition to something like Jiu-Jitsu, because I'm doing nothing on my feet there, All my principles are either not useful when my back is on the ground, or they're not as strong. And, having to figure that out, would take some time. I'm not saying I'm not willing to do it, but it would take a lot of time, and to kind of help bolster the strengths I've already had in my Bagua box. I figured looking for complementary arts as well would kind of help with that. That when later on I went to finally did go to jiu-jitsu or wrestling or something like that, I have what I have with my strengths. I can focus on that, and I can put a lot of my time trying to develop my weaknesses, because you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? And that's been my mentality when it comes to cross training.
A way to rephrase something that I heard recently of what you just said. You're only as strong as your weakest link. Is that when you're confronted with a problem, you don't rise to the occasion. You sink to your level of training, and that leads back to the train how you fight how you train thing. I thought that was cool, and it just reminded me of it. But I mean, as far as what you're trying to do for yourself, maybe some kind of obviously jiu-jitsu would be on the ground, and then Bagua standing up, and then I feel like you would need some kind of way to practice that actual transition. So maybe something in the way like wrestling, aikido, judo, something like that would kind of link those two chains together. Maybe.
Right.
Would help out.
I would heavily suggest wrestling, just from the little bit that I know about you and like the way that you fight. Because with judo, a lot of it is throwing them to the ground, which then kind of makes a lot of your stand-up striking not as effective.
Right.
Jiu-jitsu, that is a ground sport.
Mm-hmm.
Wrestling, if you get really good at sprawling, when someone tries to go for a takedown, they won't be able to take you down. There's been many UFC fighters who are great wrestlers, but they enjoyed stand-up. So they use their wrestling to be like, no, you're going to stand here and take these punches.
Right.
Chuck Liddell being a very well-known example.
They use the wrestling in the context of striking.
Yes.
That's cool. That's really cool.
So.
You think of an answer yet?
Yeah. So I think that the majority of martial artists, not fighters.
Okay.
Let me get that clear. The majority of martial artists do not focus enough time on physical development. And by that I mean working out your body.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of martial artists, myself included, went to martial arts to